What's up, extraordinary people? I'm Daniel. Peter Pan Wendy is the newest Disney live-action remake of an animated feature, and it's a remake of the 1953 feature Peter Pan, which is one of my favorite Disney movies. Now personally, I'm not really a fan of most of these remakes, so when I heard about this one, I kind of figured it would just be another in a long string of forgettable cash grabs. But then I heard that David Lowery was going to be directing it, and I started to get a little bit of hope that it might be good. David Lowery also directed the Pete's Dragon remake, which is amazing, and he's also directed a bunch of other really good movies. So I went into this movie not really knowing what to expect, but with some cautious optimism. And the movie is actually pretty good. In fact, I think it's actually the best Disney live-action remake in years. Now, it's not perfect, it does have a lot of flaws, which we'll get to, and it's nowhere near as good as the animated version, obviously. But for what this movie is, it is way better than it had any right to be. So the first thing I liked about this movie is that it really dives into the characters and themes of the story in a way that the original film didn't. This really does feel in many ways like its own story and not just a retread of another film. These characters feel fresh and new and also pretty fleshed out and deep. David Lowery's directing here is also really good. The movie has a quiet emotional strength and depth to it that really shines, especially in scenes where it's just like two characters talking to each other. You can tell David Lowery really took his assignment here seriously and created characters who are complex and who you really care about. He also put a lot of work into the pacing and making sure that information is slowly revealed in a way that keeps you engaged, and I really appreciated that. I also really like the performances in this movie. Jude Law is really good as Captain Hook, and he delivers a performance that's way more understated and subtle than you might expect for this type of character. The main cast in this movie is also really good, and I think this film succeeds where a lot of other live-action Disney remakes have failed, and that's portraying children believably. Most kids in live-action Disney remakes are really wooden and boring, and I don't blame the actors for that, of course. It's on the writers and directors. But like, the Dumbo remake was a really good example of that because the kids in that movie just don't show any emotion. They never get excited or scared about anything. The kids in this movie, though, actually act like kids, and that's something that classic Disney movies always did really well, but I feel like modern ones often don't. So it was really refreshing to see a modern Disney movie that actually got that right. Now, of course, I do have problems with this movie. First of all, the color palette here is totally bland and boring. Everything is really dull and subdued. I don't know why all Disney live-action remakes seem to insist on having the most boring visuals possible, but this movie is no exception to that trend. There's just almost nothing interesting to look at here. And it's not even just the colors, the design of this world is also pretty boring as well. Like, Neverland just looks like a bunch of rocks with grass on them. It's nowhere near as vibrant and colorful and interesting as the animated version was. The second thing I didn't really like about this movie is the action scenes are very lackluster. Like, they just feel really choreographed and not like the characters are actually fighting or actually doing what they're supposed to be doing. It doesn't really feel so much like they're fighting as much as just going through choreographed motions. There's also not much of a feeling of danger in most of the movie. A lot of the danger just feels kind of sanitized, like the filmmakers didn't really want to go all the way. It's not consistent throughout the movie. There are some scenes that are worse or better than others, but a few scenes really stood out like they were pulling their punches. Like, as an example, this isn't spoiling anything. When Captain Hook is introduced, I really like the scene for the most part, but they have him like almost kill one of his own men, but then they show that like the guy actually survived, and I felt like it just kind of lessened the impact of that scene a little bit. Like, one thing I said I liked about Strange World in my review of that movie was that they actually killed off characters, which just makes the danger more believable. And this movie didn't really do that, even though there were a few times where it could have. And that's not even the only way they could have portrayed the danger. They didn't necessarily have to kill off characters, but there are definitely better ways they could have portrayed how dangerous these situations are supposed to be. Overall, though, I found this movie to be a pleasant surprise. I've gotten used to Disney remakes being terrible or at best mediocre, and while this film is definitely closer to mediocre than it is to being great, I definitely enjoyed it a lot more than I was expecting. On a scale of 1 to 10, I'm going to give Peter Pan and Wendy a 7. Alright guys, if you've seen this movie, let me know what you think about it down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching this video, and remember that you're extraordinary. I love all of you so much. Bye.